Under a restless June sky, the English Channel lies dark and silent. The air is heavy with salt and the faint scent of diesel. Somewhere in the distance, the slow, steady hum of engines blends with the gentle lap of water against steel hulls. It is the night before a day that will change the course of history, a night suspended between the past and the unknown future. Across the vast waters, hundreds of ships float like shadows, their outlines barely visible under the pale glow of the moon. They stretch from horizon to horizon, an armada unlike anything the world has ever seen. Within their metal walls, men wait. Some speak quietly in hushed tones, others write last letters under the dim light of lanterns, and some sit silently, staring at the floor, their thoughts a mix of fear, hope, and the stubborn determination to see the morning. The year is 1944. Europe is in the grip of war. For 4 long years, Nazi Germany has held the western coast in an iron fist, its fortifications stretching for hundreds of miles. This is Hitler's Atlantic Wall, a chain of bunkers, gun emplacements, and traps meant to keep any enemy at bay. And yet, here, on this quiet night, the wall stands unknowingly on the edge of its greatest test. The soldiers know little of the grand strategy, only that they have been chosen for something monumental. In the cramped quarters of landing ships, paratrooper planes, and destroyers, they wait for the word. Their rifles are cleaned and ready. Boots are laced tight. Helmets rest nearby, scratched and worn from training. Beside them, small personal tokens, a photograph, a folded letter, a lucky coin, sit like anchors to a world far from here. Somewhere above the clouds, the wind shifts. It carries with it the distant rumble of waves against the French coast, and the knowledge that only a few miles away, in Normandy, enemy sentries stand guard. They too listen to the night, but they do not yet know that the greatest invasion in human history is gathering just beyond the darkness. On the deck of a transport ship, a young officer steps out into the cold air. He pulls his coat tight, scanning the faint silhouettes of other vessels in the gloom. Everywhere he looks, there are ships, destroyers, cruisers, transports, landing craft, each filled with men and machines, each waiting for the moment when the silence will break. In the narrow bunks below, soldiers shift in their sleep, if they sleep at all. The air smells faintly of oil, wet canvas, and the sea. Boots clink against the steel floor as someone moves down the passageway. A voice whispers a quiet joke, answered by the low murmur of laughter. Small moments, fragile against the weight of what's coming. Hours pass, and the sky above the channel thickens with low clouds. The moon disappears, and the ships drift in a cocoon of darkness. Somewhere a chaplain kneels among a group of young men, offering a prayer. Nearby, another soldier sharpens a bayonet in slow, deliberate strokes. No one speaks of fear, but it is here, in every breath, in every glance toward the looming horizon. Far away, in the command ships, maps are spread across tables. Officers lean over them, their faces lit by the red glow of lamps. Orders are checked. Timetables are reviewed. Every detail, the tides, the weather, the wind, has been studied for months. Now, all that remains is to commit to the plan. Midnight passes. The great armada begins to move. Engines rumble to life. Steel hulls cut silently through the dark waters, pushing toward the French coast. The invasion has begun its final approach. Somewhere ahead, beyond the invisible horizon, lie 5 beaches with names whispered like promises. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword. Each will soon be written into history. But tonight, they are only points on a map, shrouded in night and uncertainty. The soldiers feel the shift as the ships change course. The deck creaks. The waves slap harder against the hull. In the dark, hands tighten on rifle straps. And breath comes slower, deeper. And still, the night holds. The great fleet pushes on, unseen and unheard, carrying with it the weight of nations, the hopes of the free world, and the quiet heartbeat of thousands of men who know that by sunrise, the world will not be the same. For now, the only sound is the sea and the waiting. The horizon is still dark, but somewhere far to the east, a pale line begins to break against the night. It is not yet dawn, yet the air has shifted. The sea is restless. Engines thrum beneath the decks, low and steady. A heartbeat that grows louder with every passing moment. The men rise from their bunks in silence. There is no reveille, no shouted orders, only a quiet understanding that the hour has come. Boots hit steel floors, jackets are pulled on, webbing and gear are strapped tight. In the dim red light of the hold, faces look older than they did the night before. Eyes sharper, jaws set. Above deck, the world has changed. The great armada is no longer scattered shadows in the dark. It is a living, moving force. Row upon row of ships surge forward across the gray water. Destroyers cut through the waves, their decks bristling with guns. Transports follow in long lines, their ramps ready to drop. Behind them, slower craft carry tanks and vehicles wrapped in canvas, as if asleep before their baptism in fire. Overhead, the faint drone of aircraft grows louder. One by one, silhouettes emerge against the pale eastern sky. Squadrons of bombers and fighters moving toward the coast. They fly low and fast, their engines slicing through the dawn. Somewhere behind them, the paratroopers who jumped in the dead of night are already on the ground, scattered across the fields and hedgerows of Normandy. Some have landed far from their targets. Others are already fighting, but all are part of the same great movement pressing toward the shore. On the transport decks, the soldiers line up. Their boots are slick with seawater. Some clutch their helmets close. Others rest their hands on their rifles, knuckles white against the cold metal. No one speaks above a murmur. Some pray quietly. Some chew on gum or biscuits just to keep their mouths busy. The sea spray stings their faces. They watch the shoreline grow sharper in the morning light. It is not a peaceful coast. Even at this distance, they can see the dark lines of bunkers etched into the cliffs and dunes. Pillboxes crouch behind layers of wire and steel. Long guns point out toward the channel, waiting. And beyond them, the small French villages lie silent, holding their breath. Then, the first sound. A distant thud rolls across the water, followed by another, and another, until the horizon blooms with flashes of light. The naval bombardment has begun. From the decks of battleships and cruisers, the guns thunder. Great plumes of fire and smoke leap into the sky. The sea shakes with each blast. Shells scream overhead, slamming into the shore with bursts that send earth and stone flying. The German defenses answer in kind. Their heavy guns roar from the cliffs, sending shells into the water near the advancing fleet. The landing craft are lowered into the sea. Steel doors creak and chains rattle as they descend from the mother ships. The men climb down rope ladders into the bobbing boats below, boots slipping on wet rope, hands numb from the cold. The smell of fuel and salt fills their noses. Engines roar as the small craft form into waves, each heading toward its assigned beach. The water is rough. Spray hits faces, soaks uniforms, blurs vision. The shoreline looms larger with each rise and fall of the waves. Bullets begin to hiss across the water, throwing up tiny splashes. Some men duck instinctively. Others stare straight ahead, jaws clenched. Overhead, the sky is alive with movement. Fighters streak low, strafing enemy positions. Bombers drop their payloads on the bunkers. Yet still, the enemy guns fire back. The air is thick with smoke and dust, a veil that hides and reveals the shore in quick, jarring flashes. Inside one landing craft, a sergeant's voice cuts through the noise. "Remember your training. Keep moving forward. Don't stop for anyone." The men nod, some swallowing hard. The boat lurches, slamming against a wave. The shore is close now. Close enough to see the barbed wire, the jagged metal obstacles driven into the sand. Close enough to hear the sharper crack of rifles above the deep thunder of the artillery. The ramps are still up, but they will not be for long. Each man knows that when the doors drop, the only way is forward. There will be no cover but the sea, the sand, and the smoke. A final explosion rocks the shoreline. A direct hit on a German position. The men grip their rifles tighter. Somewhere behind them, the next wave of craft pushes forward. Somewhere ahead lies the thin strip of sand that must be crossed. The engines roar one last time. The coxswain shouts over the gunfire, and as the sun rises fully above the horizon, the first ramps slam down into the surf. The invasion of Normandy has begun. The ramp crashes down, and the world erupts. A wall of sound slams into the soldiers. The deafening hammer of machine guns, the sharp crack of rifles, the heavy thud of mortar shells bursting in sand and surf. Cold seawater rushes into the landing craft, slapping against boots, weighing down gear. Men surge forward, some wading into waist-deep water, others diving headfirst to avoid the bullets that scream past. The air is filled with chaos. Bullets hiss like angry hornets, snapping the water just inches away. Shells throw plumes of spray sky-high, raining salt and shrapnel. Men stagger, stumble, vanish beneath the waves, sometimes resurfacing, sometimes not. The beach is still 100 yards away, but it feels like miles. The men push forward, bent low, rifles clutched tight. Some drag comrades by the straps of their life jackets, pulling them toward what little cover there is. Others throw themselves flat in the shallows, hugging the cold sea as machine gun tracers cut overhead. Ahead, the sand is a killing ground. Pillboxes spew fire in long, unbroken bursts. Every few seconds, mortar rounds drop into the surf, sending columns of water and steel into the air. The scent of cordite, smoke, and salt water clings to every breath. A sergeant shouts over the roar, "Move! Move! Get off the beach!" His voice is swallowed by the gunfire, but the urgency is clear. Groups of men sprint toward the jagged metal obstacles, check hedgehogs, steel beams driven into the sand, twisted into deadly shapes. They crouch behind them, chests heaving, the rusted metal barely wide enough to shield a man's head. Snipers pick targets from the cliffs. Each crack of a rifle drops another soldier into the sand. Medics crawl forward under fire, dragging the wounded back toward the waterline, patching wounds with hands slick from both seawater and blood. Explosions ripple down the beach. Some are the enemies. Others come from demolition teams working frantically to clear the obstacles. Satchel charges boom against the steel, blasting gaps in the defenses for the next wave to push through. Still, the fire from the cliffs does not let up. German machine gunners rake the shoreline, forcing men to hug the sand until the moment comes to rush again. Each dash forward feels like a gamble with fate, and not all make it to the next patch of cover. Farther down the beach, a tank finally makes it ashore. Its tracks churn the wet sand as it swings its turret toward the cliffs. The gun fires, the recoil sending dust and smoke billowing. A German position falls silent, but there are dozens more. The tide creeps in, narrowing the space between the sea and the seawall. Men cluster along the base of the low wall, panting, reloading, their uniforms soaked and heavy. The wall offers a momentary shield from the fire, but the objective lies beyond. A lieutenant leans in, his face streaked with mud and salt. "We go on my mark. Straight for the bluff." No one argues. They all know the mission. Break through, climb the heights, silence the guns. The whistle blows. Men leap from behind the wall, charging up the open sand. Bullets rip into the ground at their feet. Mortars scream overhead. The climb is brutal. Loose earth sliding under boots, barbed wire snagging on packs. Some reach the top. They throw grenades into firing slits, clear bunkers room by room, shouting for the next squad to follow. Others fall halfway up, the slope swallowing them in a mix of dirt and smoke. Minutes stretch into eternity, but slowly, inch by bloody inch, the tide turns. Pillboxes fall silent. The surviving defenders retreat deeper inland. More men crest the bluff, bringing with them the weight of the invasion force. Behind them, the beach is still littered with wreckage. Shattered landing craft, burning vehicles, bodies lying where the waves lap at their boots. But the line has been broken. Omaha is not yet secure. But the foothold is there, paid for in the hardest possible coin. And inland, Normandy awaits. The bluffs of Omaha are behind them now. But the fight has only just begun. The men move cautiously inland, their boots sinking into the damp, churned soil of Normandy. The air is heavy with the scent of cordite and churned earth. Somewhere ahead, sporadic gunfire crackles, a reminder that the enemy is not far. The landscape is unlike anything most of the soldiers have seen before. Tall earthen banks topped with thick hedges form a maze across the countryside. These hedgerows are centuries old, planted long before anyone imagined tanks and rifles would move through them. To the locals, they divide fields. To the soldiers, they are walls, concealing movement, trapping sound, and hiding the enemy. The first hedgerow is approached with care. Riflemen fan out, weapons ready, while a squad leader signals for the scouts to climb up and peer over. A quick glance, and a whispered warning. German positions on the other side. The quiet shatters in an instant. A burst of machine gun fire tears through the leaves. Men drop flat into the dirt, pressing themselves into the mud as bullets stitch across the ground. Grenades arc overhead, exploding in dull, muffled thumps that shake the earth but barely clear the wall of roots. The order comes: flank them through the next hedgerow. It's easier said than done. Each field is its own fortress. The thick walls force the men into narrow lanes of approach. Every turn could lead straight into an ambush. A squad pushes down a sunken lane, its walls so high that the sky becomes a narrow strip above their helmets. The sound of boots on gravel is loud in the confined space. A German voice calls out, and then the rattle of an MG-42. The lane becomes a trap. Without hesitation, a soldier lobs a smoke grenade forward. The white cloud billows, masking their movement as they scramble up the earthen bank. At the top, they burst through the hedge in a tangle of branches and thorns. They land in a ditch on the other side, face to face with a startled German rifleman. A shout, a quick shot, and the fight surges forward again. Every advance is slow, grinding. The men move field by field, each one cleared with grenades, rifle fire, and sheer determination. Machine gun nests hidden in barns. Snipers firing from church steeples in distant villages. Mortars dropping shells into the open gaps between the hedgerows. In one field, a Sherman tank lumbers forward, its wide tracks crushing the thick root walls. The gun fires point blank into a German position, blowing apart the hedge in a storm of dirt and leaves. Infantry rush through the gap, pouring rifle fire into the defenders as they scatter. But the Germans are not giving ground easily. They know these fields. They know every rise, every bend in the road, every narrow lane where a tank can be trapped. By midday, progress is measured in yards, not miles. The heat builds under the summer sun. The soldiers' uniforms are heavy with sweat, their throats dry from shouting over gunfire. The hedgerow country seems endless, but the objective is clear. Push inland, secure the road to St. Lo, and cut off the enemy's ability to reinforce the beaches. Late in the day, the sound of fighting fades for a moment. A field is cleared. The men gather to catch their breath. The grass is littered with spent casings. Smoke drifts in the air, mixing with the sweet scent of crushed leaves. But rest is brief. In the distance, the crack of rifles starts again. Another hedgerow, another fight. The line moves forward once more. By nightfall, they have taken a cluster of stone farmhouses. The walls are scarred with bullet holes. Windows are shattered. A barn smolders quietly, its roof half collapsed. Inside one farmhouse, the men set up a temporary command post. Maps are spread on a table. Fingers trace the narrow roads toward the next day's objective. They know the enemy is still close. They know tomorrow will be just as hard. Outside, the hedgerows cast deep shadows in the moonlight. The fields are silent now, but in that silence lies the weight of the day, and the knowledge that this war will not be won quickly. Somewhere in the darkness, a German patrol moves quietly through the lanes, searching for a weak point. Somewhere else, paratroopers are still fighting to hold the crossroads. Normandy is far from secure, but tonight, in these blood-soaked fields, the Allied foothold has pushed just a little deeper into France. The hedgerows behind them. The mission now turns toward a new objective: Carentan, a small town, tucked between the beaches of Utah and Omaha. On the map, it's just a name. In reality, it's the key to linking the American beachheads into a single, unbroken front. Without Carentan, the enemy can drive a wedge between the Allied forces, isolating them and throwing the entire invasion into jeopardy. The road to the town runs along a narrow causeway, flanked on either side by flooded fields, deliberately submerged by the Germans to slow the advance. The only path forward is along a raised embankment barely wide enough for two men to walk abreast. Every 100 yards, a small bridge crosses a drainage ditch, each one wired with explosives. The men advance before dawn, their silhouettes just shadows in the mist. The smell of wet earth and stagnant water rises from the flooded fields. Every step feels exposed. Every movement feels watched. The first bridge is reached, and with it, the first burst of German fire. Machine guns open from concealed positions in the trees ahead. The air is instantly filled with the hiss and snap of bullets, the metallic crack of ricochets off the bridge rail. Men dive to the ground, pressing themselves against the wet timbers. A sergeant shouts orders over the gunfire. Smoke grenades are tossed forward, rolling across the planks and spilling white clouds into the still air. Through the haze, the soldiers rush forward, boots hammering the wood. Grenades are hurled into the gun positions. The explosions echo across the flooded plain, followed by the sharp cry of wounded men. Bridge by bridge, they push on. The fighting is close, desperate. Every few steps, another burst of gunfire erupts from the hedges, forcing the men into cover. Mortar rounds fall with sudden violence, sending sprays of mud and water into the air. By mid-morning, they are within sight of the town. Carentan rises ahead, its stone houses clustered along narrow streets, its church steeple piercing the low clouds. But between the Americans and those streets lies one more obstacle. Hill 30. The rise is not high, but it commands the approaches to the town. The Germans have fortified it with trenches, machine gun nests, and well-hidden snipers. The attack begins with a rolling artillery barrage. Shells burst along the crest of the hill, sending fountains of dirt and stone into the air. Then, the riflemen move up, bent low, bayonets fixed. Halfway up, the fire comes. Rifles crack from behind sandbags. The rattle of an MG-42 sweeps across the slope. Men drop into shallow depressions, their helmets ringing with the impact of near misses. The climb is slow, each yard won at the cost of another casualty, but momentum is on their side. Grenades blast open the first trench. A squad charges in, rifles barking, clearing it in seconds. From there, they push to the crest. The surviving defenders melt away toward the town, leaving only the dead and wounded behind. With Hill 30 in Allied hands, the approach to Carentan is finally open. But the battle is far from over. The first streets are narrow. The house is built of thick stone. Every doorway is a potential firing position. Every window a sniper's nest. The fighting here is brutal and intimate. Rifle fire at point-blank range. Grenades tossed through open windows. Shouts and gunfire echo off the walls, blending into a constant roar. A squad pushes into a building on the corner. Inside, the air is heavy with dust. A German soldier bursts from behind a staircase, his rifle swinging up. But a burst from a Thompson drops him before he can fire. Street by street, the Americans push forward. A Sherman tank lumbers down the main road, its gun blasting holes through barricades. Behind it, infantry rush forward, using the tank as moving cover. By late afternoon, the church square is in sight. A final German machine gun fires from the steeple, its rounds cracking overhead. A single well-aimed shell from the Sherman ends its defiance in a shower of stone and splintered wood. With that, Carentan is theirs. The men gather in the square, breathing hard, faces smeared with dirt and smoke. Some slump against walls. Others stare silently down the streets they've fought to clear. It has taken every ounce of effort to get here, and tomorrow, the enemy will try to take it back. But tonight, for the first time since D-Day, the American beaches are linked. The line is unbroken. The night after the battle is uneasy. The men hold the town, but they know it is not the end. Carentan is the bridge between two armies, and the enemy will not give it up without a fight. Scouts bring back grim news. A German armored force is massing to the south. Infantry from the elite Fallschirmjäger, paratroopers hardened by years of war, supported by tanks and half-tracks. Their orders: retake Carentan at dawn. The streets are quiet in the early morning, but beneath that silence lies tension. Every squad is at their post. Rifles loaded, machine guns sighted on the approaches, sandbags piled high at street corners. The first sound is faint, a low rumble in the distance. It grows, steadily, until the metallic clank of tank tracks becomes clear. Engines growl like beasts in the mist. Then, the crack of a single rifle shot, and suddenly, the storm begins. Mortar shells drop into the town, sending showers of brick and dust into the air. The ground shakes under the blasts. Smoke drifts through the streets, blurring the outlines of buildings. Out of the haze, German infantry appear, shadows moving quickly, their weapons flashing. Behind them, the dark silhouettes of Panzer IV tanks roll forward, their turrets sweeping side to side. An American machine gun opens from a second-story window, its tracers cutting through the smoke. Two paratroopers drop instantly, but more take their place, hugging the walls as they advance. The 1st Panzer reaches the edge of the square. Its main gun roars, blowing apart the corner of a building. Wood splinters, stone crumbles. The defenders inside scramble to find new cover. Bazooka teams move into position. One kneels behind the wreck of a cart, steadies his aim, and fires. The rocket streaks across the square, slamming into the tank's side with a deafening explosion. Smoke pours from the hatch, but the Panzer keeps moving. A second shot finally stops it, flames licking at its armor as the crew bails out, only to be cut down by rifle fire. Still, the Germans press forward. Fallschirmjäger squads slip through alleyways, appearing suddenly on the flanks of American positions. A brutal firefight erupts in a narrow side street. Grenades tossed over barricades, bullets snapping off stone walls. The Americans fall back toward the town center, fighting for every step. The air is thick with the smell of smoke and cordite. Shouts in English and German mix into a single chaotic roar. Just when it seems the line might break, a distant rumble is heard. Different this time. Lower, deeper, familiar. Sherman tanks. The 2nd Armored Division has arrived. They roll into Carentan with engines roaring, guns blazing. The 1st Sherman blasts a hole through a German half-track, sending its passengers scrambling for cover. Infantry riding on the tanks leap down into the streets, charging into the fight. The momentum shifts instantly. American paratroopers rally, pushing forward alongside the armor. A Panzer tries to reverse out of the square, but a Sherman's 75mm gun finds its mark, sending it up in flames. The counterattack begins to falter. German squads, cut off from one another, begin to pull back. Some retreat in groups, others scatter into the hedgerows. The street fighting slows, then stops. When the last shots fade, the square is littered with smoking wrecks. Shell casings crunch underfoot. Medics move quickly from man to man, binding wounds, carrying the fallen away on stretchers. Carentan still stands. The American line remains unbroken. But the cost has been heavy. The men know the war is far from over. Beyond the town lie more hedgerows, more rivers, more battles waiting to be fought. Yet this day, they have held the ground. They have kept the beaches connected. And for now, that is enough. The smoke has barely cleared over Carentan, but already the next chapter begins. The men rest in the rubble of captured buildings, helmets pushed back, faces streaked with dirt and exhaustion. Some sit silently, staring at nothing. Others write quick notes to send home, their words short and careful. In the quiet, the sound of distant gunfire drifts in from the countryside. The front is moving, always moving, and soon they will move with it. The battle for Carentan has achieved its purpose. Utah and Omaha Beach are now joined, forming one continuous line of Allied control along the Normandy coast. Supplies and reinforcements can flow more freely. But the Germans are far from beaten. They hold the high ground inland. They hold the network of hedgerows, those ancient earth and hedge barriers that turn every field into a fortress. The next objective is clear: push deeper into France, break through the hedgerows, reach Saint-Lô. From there, the road will open toward Paris. The morning after the victory, columns of troops file out of Carentan. The streets they fought for so fiercely now stand almost deserted, save for a few civilians peeking from behind curtains, their eyes a mixture of gratitude and lingering fear. Beyond the last houses, the land spreads into the bocage, a patchwork of small fields hemmed in by thick, tangled walls of green. Every turn in the road hides what lies ahead. Every hedgerow could hold an ambush. The advance is slow, measured, always wary. A squad creeps forward through a gap in the hedge. Rifles sweep side to side. Somewhere close, a machine gun opens, its burst snapping branches and leaves. Men drop flat in the mud. Grenades arc over the hedge, detonating with muffled thumps, clearing the way inch by inch. The days blur together. Advance. Stop. Fight. Advance again. The hedgerows make Normandy feel endless. But every mile gained weakens the German hold. Captured maps show their defenses thinning. Some villages are abandoned before the Allies arrive. Others are defended to the last man. At night, the men dig in wherever they stop. Some sleep in foxholes, others in the ruins of barns. The glow of distant fires flickers on the horizon. Artillery rumbles through the darkness, sometimes close enough to make the ground shudder. Letters from home arrive sporadically, often weeks late. A crumpled envelope passed from hand to hand can lift spirits for a moment, even if the words are already known by heart. The push towards St. Lo gathers momentum in late June. The 101st Airborne and the 2nd Armored Division press forward side by side. Tank engines roar in the narrow lanes, their tracks crushing the roadside grass. Infantry fan out to protect the flanks. The Germans resist fiercely, but their armor is dwindling. They trade ground for time, hoping to regroup further south. But the Allies press on, knowing that every step forward brings them closer to a decisive breakout. By mid-July, the hedgerows begin to give way to more open fields. St. Lo comes into view, or what is left of it. The town is little more than shattered stone and twisted beams. Weeks of bombing and artillery have reduced it to rubble. Still, the German defense is stubborn. Street by street, the Americans push through. Snipers fire from ruined buildings. Machine guns sweep the crossroads. But gradually, the fire slackens. The defenders slip away under cover of darkness. When St. Lo finally falls, it feels like the end of one struggle and the start of another. This victory opens the door to Operation Cobra, a massive armored thrust designed to break the German lines once and for all. From here, the war in France will change. The slow, grinding fight of the hedgerows will give way to open pursuit. Tanks will roll across wide fields. Armored columns will race down country roads. And the road to Paris will no longer be a distant dream. It will be within reach. But for the men who began this journey at Carentan, the memories remain. The heat of the street battles, the smell of burning armor, the cries of the wounded. They carry these with them, alongside the hope that each step forward brings the war closer to its end. In the quiet moments, as they clean their rifles or check their gear, some think back to the beaches, to the night they landed in Normandy. Others think ahead, to the cities yet to be taken, the bridges yet to be crossed. The road beyond Carentan stretches far, through France, into Belgium, and eventually into Germany itself. But it all began here, in the narrow streets of a small French town, where paratroopers and tank crews stood together and refused to let go.